I welcome you to another Tuesday teaching. This is learnwithjoes, an Academy of Knowledge Economy, and my name is Josephine, your digital professor. On Tuesdays like this, I teach one of the core courses in my area of specialization, philosophy of religion and theology. And today I'm continuing with the free will, but especially on the debate. Last week when I spoke about the nature and range of free will, I said I'll be going into the philosophical debate of free will. So the very first debate will be on today. We are going to teach on it or talk on it on the very first debate between Van and Inwagen. So just join me. And before I go on, let's join learnwithjoes, okay? Learnwithjoes. I welcome you back. For those who are familiar with this, my channel, you know, during my teaching on Tuesdays like this, I love to share my presentation with you so that you can follow me as I teach. And today, we are talking about the philosophical debate. That's what we are going on to talk about. I see how the debate is going on. It's a free will debate. So please join me. Dennett and Van Inwagen debates. Michael Norwich was one who actually is the participant. He examines the current state of play in this long-running debate by comparing the views of Dennett and Van Inwagen. Since the ancient Greeks, one of the most provocative and oft discussed questions in philosophy has been whether we have free will in determining the course of our actions, or whether forces beyond our control determine our actions. Before the advent of secular thought, those forces might have been identified as the whims of the gods. You know, we have what we call gods of nations. However, the tradition of naturalism in Western thought goes back at least as far as the Milesian school of Greek philosophy in the 6th century BC. More recently, the cognitive sciences have developed what seems increasingly likely that our brains walk along deterministic lines, or if quantum effects are non-negligible, at the very least, along mechanical lines. So a new debate has arisen, and this debate are the concept of determinism or naturalism, or what we call mechanism, when applied to the brain sciences logically compatible with free will. Some of the attention actually shifted from the debate between the determinists and the anti-determinists to that between the compatibilists and the anti-compatibilists. Two declared opponents in this debate are Peter Van Inwagen, author of an essay on free will, Oxford University Press, 1983, and Daniel C. Dennett, author of several books, including Elbow Room, MIT Press, 1984. I will be referencing here. Each argues from premises he regards as antecedentally plausible, with Van Inwagen taking the anti-compatibilist line and Dennett the compatibilist line. As Van Inwagen is the more precise arguer of the two, I will use his work as the starting point for this discussion. Like Dennett, whose book is subtitled The Varieties of Free Will Worth Wanting, he argues that we have free will. Where they differ is like their relationship to determinism. Inwagen presents three premises in his main argument. The very first one, that free will is in fact incompatible with determinism. And the second, that moral responsibility is incompatible with determinism. And the third one, that since we have moral responsibility as rational being, determinism is false. Hence, it concludes we have free will. I think you are following and you are getting exactly what Inwagen is saying. Inwagen argues on three key points. That free will is in fact, because when we look at it, Inwagen is acting and is discussing, is arguing on the side of the anti-compatibilist. That is, free will is in fact incompatible with determinism. And he's saying it's not compatible because moral responsibility, we are supposed to be rational beings. So if we are rational, we have moral liberty. And the moral responsibility from our moral liberty is incompatible with determinism. And then since we have moral liberty, we have moral responsibility, determinism is false. Hence, it concludes we have free will. The argument for the first premise runs as follows. If determinism is true, then our acts are the consequences of the laws of nature and events in the remote past. But it is not up to us what went on before our birth, nor is it up to us what the laws of nature are. And therefore, the consequences of these things, including our present acts, are not up to us. So the argument for the second premise, which we find on page 181 of his book, is that if no one is morally responsible for having failed to perform any act, and if no one is morally responsible for any event, and three, no one is morally responsible for any state of affairs, there's no such thing as moral responsibility. That means you cannot be talking about moral liberty, moral responsibility, if there's no one responsible for it. So the third premise, Inwagen does not present a concise summary of his line of argument. He takes it as being self-evident that we have moral responsibility, as we do, after all, continue to hold people morally responsible for their actions. It's because we hold people morally responsible for their actions that we have courts. When you do something wrong, we have courts to judge you. We have lawyers. We have judges. We set up all these things because we think people are morally responsible. However, Dennett will not fault the validity of Inwagen's main argument. He does argue with the truth of his premises. His approach, Dennett's approach, is to reformulate the concepts of up to us. Reformulate the concept of up to us in the sense of the argument for the first premise and responsibility. Before I expand on that, however, I want to discover what I think is the difference in the philosopher's starting points that cause the divergence of opinion. Descartes, let's talk about this. Descartes viewed the mind as a pure ego, a permanent spiritual substance untouched by physical processes. They could influence through the senses, what we call the sensational senses. But there was no other way. It was influenced by the mechanistic events going on outside the world. So it could influence those events indirectly. However, through the manipulation of his host body via the pineal gland. As modern science advanced in its understanding of the way the brain works, this image of the mind was undermined. It began to look more and more like the mind is purely physical entity, as if there is no person. And we know we have personhood or pure ego outside the realm of physical causation. Some philosophers, like Churchlands, now go so far as to say that the mind does not even exist. So, in defense of this, the philosopher of metaphysics has two options: retrenchment and retreat. Dennett's strategy of retrenchment is to build a second line of defense for the concept of free will by reformulating the concept so that it is not in conflict with current theories in the brain sciences. There is a sacrifice in that it loses track of our ordinary common sense views of mind and free will. So Dennett claims he's doing ordinary language philosophy, but I suspect he has been an academic so long he has forgotten what concerns ordinary people. Inwagen's strategy of the retreat is to dismiss current trends in science and maintain the belief in agent causation. That is, the view that people can cause things to happen in the world outside the standard mechanistic physical causation. Inwagen complains that many philosophers are overawed by current science and make exaggerated assumptions about the degree to which it will eventually be able to explain how the brain and the mind works. However, for various reasons, chief among them being the empirical sources of quantum physics principle, if it can be applied to the brain, would mean that even if we knew anything about the physical state of a brain at a given instant, we still could not predict its state in the next instant with absolute accuracy. So it will imply, therefore, that the brain was not deterministic in the strictest sense of the term. You can see this is an interesting debate between the anti-compatibilist and compatibilist. I'm going to end this debate next Tuesday. This is the first one. The second one, we go into the second debate by next Tuesday. Please join me. Join me next Tuesday when I conclude on this current debate. And I love to have your feedback, okay? So please check the description link for my email to send me, or you can make comments under this particular video. Join me on Friday for another Friday tonic, and then next Tuesday when I conclude with this debate, free will debate 2. Thank you.